Welcome back to Real Talk with Myron Mitchell. I'm here today with entrepreneur, author, good friend of the show, Alan Y. Bird. How you doing today?
What's up, brother? It's good to see you, man.
Yes,
good
sir.
to see you.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for having me. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate you, man.
We so glad that you blessed us with your book and the presence of trying to find out our lineage and our heritage and what's going on with our ancestors.
I appreciate
can you lead
man.
us in and let us know kind of like what made you start writing The Promise and the Completion?
Man, you know, it's funny. I'm an entrepreneur first. I've been making hair care products for about 24 years.
Okay.
And I was minding my own business, you know, doing my thing, you know, keep my head low, focus on my industry. And this cultural challenge, this cultural question actually came to my front door in my industry about identity, who we are. The big thing that we were dealing with from a controversial standpoint was the fact that there was a relaxer lawsuit saying that relaxers cause cancer. I'm a chemist, and the NIH study that was cited had several misleading and misinformation type of information in it, basically.
Right.
One of them was the fact that they said that pressing tools and keratin treatments, let's get a little technical, were included in this classification called relaxers. Right. So long story short, you know, I knew this was wrong. I started doing my research. And once I debunked a lot of that stuff, and we are continuing to, it went to another level, which was, oh, by the way, not only are relaxers bad, but if you use relaxer, you hate yourself. That, you know, it's Eurocentric to use relaxers, any kind of products, unless it's quote unquote African, that makes it authentic.
Okay. Could you explain, can you break down the word for just a general listener or a viewer? What is Eurocentric?
Yes. Okay. Eurocentric, basically, when you have it's a post-colonial term that basically says that the colonies, the countries that colonized Africa took their culture and their way of life there. It didn't completely erase the indigenous, you know, population's culture,
right?
But any kind of public space use, whether it's the language, sometimes religion, how they wore their aesthetics, those were Europeanized,
right?
And so they associated colonization with America, Black America in particular, and so we were put into this category of, well, if you were, you know, dressed in a certain way, if you're wearing your hair a certain way, if you dance a certain way or sing a certain way, or just culturally in general, that it was somehow Eurocentric. And it was a way to make us feel like we weren't authentic. And it was filled within my industry with, well, these other things are authentic. And so I took exception to that because within our beauty culture, we have styles that we come up with within ourselves. We were never copying off someone else. We were always doing our own thing.
Right.
And that led to a further investigation into us as a people overall.
Right. So what we would call that now in 2026 a rabbit hole. You kept going down the rabbit hole until you found that our people were our people.
Yes, exactly. And so my thing was, if we're calling ourselves African American, but we have people that are actually African, that are saying that, well, we're true African, and you have slave blood in you, or you're part African,
right? And
then we're sitting there like, well, okay, well, we want to identify with this here, but if we can't be all of that, then who are we really?
Right.
And that's when I discovered that this very, very significant word called ethnogenesis. Ethnogenesis.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you have to break that down for
yes.
the general listener?
Ethnogenesis is an anthropological. I'm getting tongue tied. Okay. It's a word in anthropology, and it actually means a beginning of an ethnic group.
Okay.
Through disruption, a new culture is formed.
Right.
And it's generally acknowledged that Black Americans meet that foundational definition of ethnogenesis, because we had 14 different tribes that were pulled together. They were purposely disrupted. Their language, their culture, everything about them was disrupted, and they were mixed in together. And out of that came a whole new culture, a whole new type of language, a whole new way of living. And it began here in America.
Right. So what, in the book, you referenced the 14th Amendment. What in the 14th Amendment do you think either helped the nation or helped us build another nation?
Well, think about the 14th Amendment, and it was hardly ever cited other than, the Equal Protection Clause. People hardly ever talked about the birthright citizenship until now recently, with all the controversy going on with birthright citizenship. And I heard one of the most unlikely sources, President Trump, say behind the seal of the presidency that birthright citizenship was meant for the babies of slaves. I was like, what? I'd never heard that before. Not articulated like that. Yeah, so I was like, what does that mean? So further down a rabbit hole. Further down a rabbit hole. So I love the fact that people are doing their research all over the place. I told you we had an interview last week where we've gotten a lot of positive and controversial comments. And I'm just
what
amazed.
were some of the controversial comments?
Identity. Between either we weren't slaves at all, or that we're completely indigenous, that we didn't come from Africa, or that we're African and we didn't have citizenship. It's just a whole mixed bag of different perspectives. And one of the things that I'm very, very adamant about as a researcher is to be respectful, to allow everyone's perspective, but at the same time, find the utility in those answers. How is it relevant to today? How can that information help us going forward in repairing and laying a solid foundation for our children going forward? And that's where it led me to the 14th Amendment. Because there was so much controversy about, do we belong here? Are we an outsider? Is Africa our home? There was never a situation about, is this our home?
And in the book, do you explain your view from that?
Absolutely. I explain it from a constitutional standpoint. Absolutely constitutional. Because the thing is, there have been so many different opinions, but I had to go to the law. And that's why I say that we remember the bondage. We remember the freedom, but we forgot the covenant. And the covenant is the 14th Amendment being ratified on July 9, 1868, that gave us birthright citizenship foundationally, and that nothing after that could change that. But we've never celebrated it, and it was never commemorated.
Why do you think that is? Mainstreamly, we never commemorated the July 9th, and you say they recognize it.
Yeah, it's foundational.
It's recognized, but it's not celebrated. And do you think all Americans should celebrate it, or just Black Americans?
That's a great question, man. Listen, the 14th Amendment, what it did, just to just look background, we talk about it in the book. The 14th Amendment was made because after the Civil War had ended, the Confederate states that seceded, the only way they could get back into the Union, because they were broke, they were their economy was in shambles, because again, slavery was had ended through the 13th Amendment, not Juneteenth, but the 13th Amendment abolished slavery completely. So their economies were in shambles. The war had torn that whole region apart, and the only way back in, and for those states to be repaired, they had two choices: they could stay seceded and do their own thing, or they can go back into the Union. Well, the Republicans at the time, they played hardball. They said, listen, if you're going to come back into the Union, these are the conditions that you can come back to the Union. So the only way back into the Union, was to, number one, you have to recognize and ratify this 14th Amendment, this radical foundational amendment that said, not only are, if you're born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction, then you are a citizen. period, point blank. That was radical move number one, okay? Number two, not only were they going to be recognized as citizens, they came back with the 15th that said that, and also they'll be allowed the right to vote.
Right.
And so it was a small window. They played hardball, and they told the South, the only way y'all get back to the Union is if the people you formerly enslaved came back into the Union with you, but not just come back into the Union with you, they got to come back as citizens just like you. That was radical, man. Right. That was radical. And so from that point, it became, but because it was so radical, because remember now, they thought slavery was evil. They wanted to end slavery, but it wasn't necessarily about giving y'all membership.
Right. It wasn't about giving us no membership. It was just they felt they needed us kind of like to even it out.
Yeah, the thing was slavery was a moral evil. They knew that was wrong. So they definitely want to end slavery, but they just weren't about putting you in the club. You know what I'm saying? And so at that point, yes.
And of course, they didn't want to put us in the club because then that would mean that we would be equal.
Exactly.
And learn and get as
the same
good or as more prevalent than them.
Yeah, and think about it now, they spent the last 200 some odd years believing through religion that they were superior. So you got to make, what I love about history is you have to look at it in the whole picture. When you take little spots from it, it looks very, very contradictory. I remember with the Bible, and it's often said, don't read the Bible with your carnal mind. So you have to read the Bible in spirit. Because you read it in spirit, everything of the contradictions fade away and you see the whole story. Because, the Bible also says that God said he hated Esau, but loved Jacob. And that's a contradiction if you think about it, because Jacob was the trickster. Jacob was the one doing the bad stuff. Esau was the good one. So you say, well, why would God, hate Esau, the good person, and love the bad person? If you look at it in the spirit, you say, oh, wow, because he knew eventually Jacob was going to come to him and cry out to God to want to change. But Esau was already good, so he ain't need God. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
And that's how I look at our country. I look at our country the same exact way. If you look at it as a continuum, you see the principle on July 4th, 1776, when they said that all men are created equal and given rights by God, not man. And so that contradiction was there, and they've been fighting. The country was fighting itself all that time. And they tried everything they could to justify it, but they eventually had to face God.
So I also saw you praise Frederick Douglass in the book.
Oh man, yeah, man.
What did Frederick Douglass do that left an impression on you that you thought he was one of the heroes of this situation?
Man, Frederick Douglass is, man, that guy's heavy, man. I mean, I have his book. I've read it. I think he didn't realize how heavy he was. Okay, it's his book, but we reduced him to an abolitionist as a great orator, and he was. But he was more than that. This guy carried a certain consciousness about and belief in the moral values and the moral commitments of the country that he would not allow it to shirk away from it. He continued to bring it up to their face. This is what you said in your word. You gotta stick to your word. Honor. You gotta honor your word. And continue to hit them with it. What is this? I have a chapter in my book about what this speech. What to the slave is 4th of July. And he talks about that. And that speech a lot of times gets misconstrued in the sense that, again, they take it out of context. If you read the whole speech, yes, he addressed the fact that there was a contradiction in celebrating the 4th of July for the slave. But towards the end of the speech, he talks about, but I have hope that one day these things will change because the world is changing. And so he stuck with it. And because of that, he was a counselor to President Lincoln. He was well respected. And the brother's heavy, man. I call him the Black founding father of America, of Black Americans.
I got a couple questions that people wanted me to ask you before. Since I knew they knew I was going to have you on the show. In your view, what is the biggest misunderstanding Americans have about citizenship and the meaning of being an American?
That's a good question, man. The biggest misunderstanding we have about citizenship, especially for Black Americans, and I would say Americans in general, several of us, I'd say millions of us, have never left this country.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said, compare yourself to the alternative,
Right.
not the almighty.
Right.
Okay? When you're doing research and you're trying to figure out different perspectives, you need to compare and contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Several Americans have never left this country, especially Black Americans. You know, a lot of us haven't left the side of town or the city we're in.
Yeah. I mean, you got those people who don't leave the city.
And so a lot of times, me being in the military, I was a Marine and have traveled overseas, and then travel, just in vacation and leisure and stuff. You get to see, wow, man,
It's different.
The difference. Like, man, America's. I'm glad I'm over here.
Right.
And you see where people who are from other nations have a much bigger appreciation for America than even most Americans do, because they come from situations that were bleak. Mm-hmm. You either got a very poor class or a rich class. Right. There is no middle class. Right. There's no ladder to get you to the next level. They can see it, not conceptually, not through a book, not through media. They lived it. Right. So when they get here, they're like, y'all say this is oppression. Mm-hmm. Y'all say this is barriers. Mm-hmm. And they're like, y'all got no idea. Right. And we've got to understand the citizenship in American citizenship. I'm telling you, it is the Roman citizenship of the ancient world. Right. And that's why it was so revolutionary that they would grant citizenship and equal protection to a former slave. That's never happened before in the history of humankind. Even in biblical times, when the Egyptians were freed, think about it. They had to leave Egypt. Right. They didn't stay there and become citizens of Egypt and get equal rights as the Egyptians. Think about how controversial that would have been. Right. So we were in bondage. Not only were we, now that we stay, and we were offered an opportunity to leave. Mm-hmm. But Frederick Douglass, John Delaney, they said, no, they said Africa is ancestral, but this is our home. Right. This is where our genealogical lineage is, that we can trace our grandmothers and they're here. Right. Now we recognize Africa as ancestral. Right. We have DNA. Like myself, I have the sickle cell trait. Mm. That's a West African trait. So I know I have African DNA in me. I'm not denying that at all. But I can't trace my genealogical lineage back there. Right. You see what I'm saying? And that's another reason how we got to where we are, because I heard you speak and you were speaking on lineage, and you need to know your lineage. Yes. And I said, yeah, that helped me in my life. Absolutely. Because I was adopted and I didn't meet my parents or my biological family until I was almost 40 years old. That's amazing. So I went through most of my life not knowing anything about my background. Wow. Anything health-wise. And that was, that was a big, major thing, because anytime I go to the doctor, they ask, well, what runs in your family? See? Yeah. I don't know. So the lineage that you speak about is something that, like I said, without that part in my life, I needed that. Yes, I needed to have it, because I didn't know, who did I look like? Yes. Do I look like, who does this person in my family I look like? Who do I look like in this person? Yes. What is this? And I got that, and that took a big like burden off my back. Awesome, it was something that was oppressing me. Absolutely. And not knowing is a form of oppression. Yeah, it is. It is, because you don't know. And it's a form of oppression, and it's an area where you can be exploited. Right. Because you don't know. And that's why I focus so much on lineage. Unfortunately, we're spending our time debating 400 and 500 years ago, ancestral origins that we cannot chase through a lineage, a genealogical lineage. And I tell my people, I said, listen, the best thing we can do as Black Americans is start with your own family. Right. Go, your birth certificates, your family reunions. We all can trace back 10, probably 5 or 6 generations just within our own family. That's your lineage. And that's very important because like you said, it's nothing like seeing people that, y'all share the same DNA.
Right.
I mean, we talking about, 35, 40, 50% same DNA. Right. And you literally look at a person and say, I look like them.
Right.
I think ethnogenesis is a word that we've got to embrace. And in doing that, it allows us to have respect for our ancestral ties, whether it's Africa, whether it's America, or European. Because the truth of the matter is, you look at me and you, brother, we probably got mixed everything.
Right, a lot.
I mean, that's just how it is. Right. That's just reality of it is. So, that ancestral part is important. But the most important thing we can go forward as Black Americans is understand our foundational constitutional right to inherit this country. And they made that decision back in 1868 to say, no, it's not enough for our former slaves to be free.
Right.
We want to write them on the deed.
Right.
And our name was written on the deed, which was the Constitution. And no amount of Jim Crow, no amount of KKK, no amount of discrimination, none of that stuff, no amount of lynching could ever take that from us. Right. Because it was written there.
Yeah, I heard you say that is the reason that came it seems like it's on schedule because of 1869. It explains why we have the KKK, the Jim Crows and all of that is because that's not what they wanted.
They didn't want that, but they couldn't get us out of here. And I think about it. Plessy v. Ferguson, that's often cited as a terrible, horrible case, and it is. But if you look at it from another perspective, Plessy v. Ferguson solidified the fact of how foundational 1868 and the 14th Amendment was. Because even though white supremacists said that we have a right to be separate from y'all, even the Supreme Court had to say, yeah, we'll agree with that, which was wrong. But we also have to say it has to be equal.
Right.
They could not just say separate. Right. If y'all want to be separate, that's fine. But the Constitution says these Black people have the constitutional right to equal access and equal rights.
Right.
And so that to me solidified it. For a long time, I looked at it from the other way, that only is bad.
Right.
But now I'm saying, you know what? Even though they wanted to do that, the Constitution said, nah, bro, you can't, this is foundational. Y'all go over there if y'all want to, but if y'all want to pool by yourself, you gotta have a pool over here. Right. If y'all want school by over here, you gotta have school over here. Right. Now, books and that kind of stuff, they found ways to kind of, get around that as far as, making it not as good. But we still had a right. Okay.
So with that being said, what if somebody who just saw this podcast and they said, I want to see what this book, what would they be getting between the two covers of the book? What insight would they get?
It's a very interesting insight. Most people look at the book and they say they see a depiction of George Washington and a depiction of Frederick Douglass. And they say, well, that doesn't make sense because George Washington was in, 1700s and Frederick Douglass was in 1800s. But I look at the American founding as an arc. Like I said beforehand, it's not a second founding. I think it's a completion of the first founding. That's why I call it the promise and the completion. Because the original founding, something I found out was really interesting, in 1776, when they had when the 4th of July, when they declared independence, you go back and look at the Declaration of Independence, it's a small U united. It's not a big U. It's not a capital U united. It's a small U. And words matter. That was a very interesting distinction that I found out. It just basically said that these United States, but they weren't collectively one nation. Right. They were still 13 separate colonies that called themselves states now, but it was a loose confederation. South Carolina and Georgia did not want to end slavery, although it was originally in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence. But in order to keep that unity, they had to go ahead and strike that, make that compromise. But even after that, they had what they called the Articles of Confederation, which is what they lived by. And it was a loose set of 13, states. Right. They had their own, money. They had their own trading treaties, different countries. So it was kind of loose. Right. So it didn't work as well as they thought it was. But looking at things in context. Sometimes you got to take things step by step.
Right.
If you push too far, too hard, nah, man, I'm not doing that.
Right.
So they had those 13 years of the loose stuff, and they found it couldn't work. They tried because again, they were like, "I want my independence. I don't want to have centralized government because we just left a monarchy, and this monarchy was totalitarian in a way. So we want to have our own freedom. So they had to make those steps. So those 13 years allowed them to try this loose Article of Confederations. Didn't really work out too good.
Right.
I mean, it was a lot of stuff back and forth. Then 1787 was when they came up with the Constitution.
Right.
And the Constitution is what finally put all of them together with a centralized government. But then, again, that's why it's so important to look at history. The way it was constructed with the three separate branches of government, co-equal branches of government, that was all thinking in mind, how do we not let one person, one party, or one group of people take over the government?
Right.
So it was purposely kind of scrambled in there to kind of go along. And, you know, we survived a civil war, obviously.
Right.
But those steps had to be taken. But one of the most important things they did in the Constitution was they made the amendment process.
Yeah, the amendments. Yeah, you can always amend something. Well, with us, we're coming down a little bit close to time. I wanted to ask you this. With Juneteenth coming up, do you think that is a day that should be celebrated in the Black community? And if so, should it be celebrated just as well as the 4th or the 9th? Or is it just a day that we just, you know, as we...
Again, I think absolutely. I think it should be celebrated. Absolutely. I think it's a great day, but it was more of a regional holiday.
Right.
Okay. So we took a regional holiday and made it national, you know, and that's fine.
Right.
But we still have to understand what really secured our citizenship.
Right. Do you think July 9th should be celebrated over Juneteenth?
I think it should be celebrated
as much.
Well, I'm gonna say this here, and it's controversial. I think July 9th is the most consequential date for Black Americans, even more than Juneteenth, because it's the day that gave us the keys to the house. Right. Okay. Like I said beforehand, it's one thing to say you're enslaved or you're free. Okay. You're free, but now you're free to go home. Okay. You know our old saying, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell up out of here. Yeah. All right. That's basically what that period between 1865, when they signed the 13th Amendment, December 7th, 1865, when they signed the 13th Amendment, which absolutely abolished slavery. Right. Now, remember, Juneteenth to June 19th, 1865 of the same year. That was just a proclamation. And I need people to understand this here. The Emancipation Proclamation was a wartime declaration. It did not free the slaves. Right. Abraham Lincoln understood that. Frederick Douglass understood that. The country understood that. It was a wartime declaration. Had the North lost the war, then every enslaved person that was freed through the Emancipation Proclamation would have to go back to their masters, right, or their owners. Lincoln understood that. Everyone understood that. That's why the 13th Amendment was what abolished the slaves. It wasn't one man, one benevolent white man. It was not Lincoln. Lincoln did not free the slaves, so we got to stop saying that. Lincoln did not free the slaves. He was one of many signatures on the 13th Amendment. December the 7th, I think December the 6th, 1865. And so those 3 years, that's where we're at. You ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell up out of here. Yeah. That's what Frederick Douglass and our guys fought for. They fought for actual membership. So now when we got keys to the house, we sitting down at the closing, and we got to sign our name on that deed too. Right. Our name's on the deed. Right. And I think Black America got to understand that. And once we understand ourselves as owners and not renters, you'll look at the situation differently. White supremacy, racism, discrimination, that stuff is going to always be here. But if you understand yourself as an owner, you're going to think differently about how you process it. You're never going to say, I'm going back home to Africa. Africa's not our home. My passport, my birth certificate says United States. Right.
We running out of time. We're gonna invite you back again.
Okay, awesome.
To finish the conversation. And did you also say that you probably are gonna write a second book?
I have 4 books assigned. Yes, I have 4 books assigned to it.
So sure, we will have you and let you know that at Real Talk, let our viewers know that we now are owners
Yes, we are.
We are, and we have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to let everybody know. Thank you for watching Real Talk with Myron. This is Alan Bird, and we'll see you on the next episode.